am your host, Connor Anthony. Coming to you live from Tampa Bay Multimedia Studios in beautiful Newport Richey, Florida. Want to give John Gaston, the owner of Tampa Bay Multimedia, a big thanks for having us. We're very excited to get our inaugural show up and running. I'm joined tonight by my co-host and good friend, fellow sports enthusiast, Curt Lorden. Good evening, buddy.
Thanks, Connor.
It was a good day yesterday. If you had money on Clemson Tigers in the 2017 National Championship game.
Is that's what happened down at Raymond James Stadium? So I was confused. I was driving around. There's a bunch of commotion. Yeah, no, it was an outstanding game. Actually, it was the one of the largest losses in Vegas history, actually. So, and speaking of which, you actually lost a bet to me.
I was going for Crimson Tide. I can't lie. I thought Alabama could go ahead, but unfortunately, when you're looking at a 6.5-point spread on the game, you're not going to be doing too hot when you've got Deshaun Watson stepping up and throwing for 3 touchdowns, 420 yards on the night, rushed for 63 yards and an additional touchdown on his way to being named the 2017 National Championship Offensive MVP of the game.
No, he played very, very well, and he played well all season, which is incredible. The reality is that Alabama came in with a true freshman quarterback, and a true freshman hasn't won the national championship since 1985. It was Tramiel Holloway from Oklahoma. He actually replaced Troy Aikman during that season after Troy broke his collarbone. So you really had kind of everything going against Alabama, which Vegas apparently didn't realize. So they still had, Alabama as a 6-point favorite. So, anyone that actually put money on Clemson, which a lot of people apparently did, and, some people took the money line in this room. I'm not going to say who, but anyway, so Connor and I had a bet. The loser took a shot, and I'm actually going to be a good sport, so I'm going to take a shot with him on our inaugural show. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers, sir.
Here's to a great show. We have a long time to talk about some stuff.
Oh, man, I have not drank Fireball since my college days.
That's actually how we're doing the show, I guess.
But yes, I unfortunately had my money on Alabama, but kind of evens out a bit as last week I had my money on Clemson against Ohio State, which is Curt's favorite team.
It is.
His lovely girlfriend, Lacey, who's not joining us tonight, she is actually an Ohio State alumni. Curt, I believe, is part of a few booster programs down here, so it was a rather heartbroken when his team was shut out 31-0, but I was able to walk away a happy man up until last night. Painful night last night for Alabama, going up 14-0, coming out strong in the first half, which is what they haven't traditionally been doing all year. It's usually taken them a bit to get going in the game, and they've been able to finish out the game strong. Last night was the opposite.
Well, Clemson's first drive was phenomenal. Then, Deshaun Watson got his bell run, and he essentially lost all composure. His passes were sailing, and Scarborough really kind of picked up the game. Everyone talked about, Sarkisian's, conservative play calling. Is it going to hurt? It's going to hurt him. It's going to help him. Sheer reality is what Clemson did to Ohio State and their spread offense. I think, Sarkisian, however you want to say his name. Something like that. Sarkisian. I'll call him Parmesan. Parmesan from now on.
Chicken Parmesan.
His conservative play calling I actually think played in Alabama's favor up until Scarborough got hurt.
I think the opposite. I think Alabama went into that game playing the game not to lose, opposed to wanting to win. They built up a lead, and they played, in my opinion, too conservatively, and that's kind of what bit them in the butt. Now, you can look at the fact that they canned Lane Kiffin after their 24-7 win in the Peach Bowl against Washington last week, which there's been reports, different signs coming out that Lane Kiffin and head coach of Alabama, Nick Saban, have had some problems. But when you fire an offensive coordinator a week before a national championship, you trust a guy he was an offensive advisor all year to the Tide, but you don't have him calling plays until the biggest game of the year.
My favorite part is last year they actually brought him in to do third down analysis, and I think Alabama was 4 of 16 on third downs. But I do want to know which is more boring, Nick Saban as a human being or Parmesan's play calling.
I'd have to say Nick Saban, and surprisingly, I watched that game, and I mean, maybe they weren't trying to cut to him, but I didn't see him screaming a lot. I was of the minority that thought someone's going to have to pay for their mess up last night, because it wasn't even the offense, though. Sarkisian's team was able to put up 31, and anytime you put up 31 on 99% of the teams you play when you're Alabama, you're going to win. But that 1% last night just couldn't get it done.
Well, I mean, it's tough to repeat as a champion. Yeah, it's
Yes.
tough to go. I think Saban was 5-0.
5-0,
in his
yes.
previous 5 national championship appearances. It's tough to win that 6-1, and it's definitely tough to go back to back. And it's really tough when your coaching staff is split apart, especially with a true freshman, a brand new running back. I mean, last year they had Derrick Henry, and he had a wonderful game, and they still have their big tight end, which gave Clemson fits. But really, this whole story is about Deshaun Watson. I mean, what he did, how he stepped up, how he had a horrible first half, and then completely turned it around. They scored 28 points in the fourth quarter. I mean,
28
that's
points
really
in the
what
second.
it's all about today. And not to take anything away from Hunter Renfrow. I mean, that kid, 4 touchdowns in 2 national championship games, dude's balling.
And no one even knew his name. I think they were giving a press conference to Nick Saban, and they brought up Hunter Renfrow. He's like, who? Who's that? So when I was driving to work today, I was listening to Sports Talk Radio, and they were even saying that he was their, I guess, star that no one had ever heard of. And the guy caught the game-winning touchdown with 1 second left. And that will go down as one of the most famous plays in collegiate football history. Watson to Renfrow with 1 second left, set up by that pass interference on Mike Williams, dropped them, I believe they were at the 10 or 15-yard line, put them at the 2, was double coveraged, had no need to trip him up, but they did. Ended up, they had to try to play Clemson man-to-man, and it failed miserably when they went on a cross.
Yeah, but was that an illegal play? Was that a pick? I don't think it was.
I don't think it was.
Dude ran a slant. They ran into each other. Renfrow rolled around.
It was good play calling. It was good play calling, and you got to give Dabo Swinney credit that he wanted revenge.
And he beat his alma mater. I mean, he played for Alabama.
Well, he's actually, it's funny you bring that up because he's actually now the first head coach in national college football history to have won a national championship game and then won a national championship game by defeating his alma mater. He was a wide receiver for Alabama and was a coach there for about 8 years before he left to go to Clemson to be their wide receiver coach. He got their head coach in 2008, and he's just been going.
He's also the first coach to cradle the playoff championship trophy like a baby and do this.
It's delicate. You've got to be.
It was horrible. The good thing, though, is actually Ezekiel Elliott, which we'll talk about later when we talk about Dallas, but he sent out a tweet, and he's got a picture of him kissing her. He's like, I kissed her first. I kissed her first. Because they were the first champion.
When they defeated Bama in 2014.
Then they defeated Oregon.
Oh, that was
rough.
rough.
Not forget about that. But,
Oregon's.
But anyway, so Renfrow's probably going to end up being drafted by the Patriots. He's following in the Edelman, just that mold, the Chris Hogan mold. And if Brady can live forever, if they can freeze him, which I hope they don't, because he's the only person that can consistently beat my Steelers, he'll end up being a Patriot.
Do you think they're going to play him at tight end, though, if he goes to New England?
He's tiny. He's like half the size of you, dude.
I didn't notice what size he was.
And he looks 9 years old.
He's 9 with 4 touchdowns in 2 games, championship games. He's doing pretty. He's probably the most popular guy on campus, second most popular guy on campus right now after
Besides
Watson.
Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun Watson was incredible, and it was interesting to me that he did so well. His record, he declared for the draft last night, if you saw, which
shocking.
Was no one would have been surprised. Yeah. 3 years.
The sun rose this morning.
I know. 3 years as a starter at Clemson, 32-3 as a starter. He lost 3 games.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious on how that will transcend into the NFL. I mean, you see, we talk about like that touchdown or that run that almost scored a touchdown was very Vince Young-esque when he went around the right side and the left
got hit out.
Right, and then the left side was similar to that, and how that will translate into the NFL. I think he's a better pure passer than Vince Young.
Yes.
I think he's got a better head on his shoulders, and he's got more poise than Jameis Winston. He's more polished than Jameis Winston.
Yes.
I mean, Jameis Winston's a fantastic quarterback, and he's grown into that this second year. But I think Deshaun, when he comes out of into the pros, if he ends up starting, I think he'll have a better rookie campaign than Jameis will. Now we'll see how that grows beyond year 2, year 3, year 4, but. I'm pretty excited to see what he's got to do. There's a lot of quarterbacks coming out this year's draft that are going to be awesome.
It's going to be a very, very quarterback-heavy draft. Now, let me ask you a question. Right now, Mel Kiper Jr., ESPN analyst, has him rated as the 3rd best quarterback prospect coming into the draft this year.
Behind who?
Mitch Trubisky of North Carolina and Deshaun Kaiser of Notre Dame.
I don't understand how any quarterback for Notre Dame could be even considered in that. I mean, I disagree with that. Mitch. I agree with. Watching him play, watching him win the games, his poise, his composure, his stats, his throwing style, that makes sense. Not the Notre Dame quarterback.
Analysts are weird. Teams want to find.
Mel Kiper's weird.
Mel Kiper, I remember he got into one of the funniest arguments I think I've seen was he got into an argument. I think this was right before the Colts drafted Peyton Manning. It was when he was a brand new analyst, and somebody said something. I think it was a Colts executive, and they were like, "Who's this guy, Mel Kiper? I don't, even know who he is." And Mel Kiper's like, "Well, if you knew who I was, you wouldn't be drafting third every year. You'd be in the playoffs perennially."
It was the owner of the Colts. It was Bill Polian.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's funny, but no, Watson, it was rated as the third best. So you're looking at right now, if I'm looking at a picture of the NFL draft, I'm looking at San Francisco at number 2. They're going to take a quarterback.
Yeah.
Possibly Trubisky, they think, but the knock against him is he's only really started 1 year.
Depends on who their coach is. They fired Chip Kelly, so
yeah.
I don't know if they've hired a new coach, but Deshaun would fit underneath Chip Kelly's system.
Yes.
If they hire someone different, it really kind of depends. There's so much time between now and then. A lot of players are going to be declaring for the draft. Jabril Peppers from Michigan just declared. Thank God, because he is
incredible.
He's a beast.
He's a man that can play 11 positions. The guy is
22, really. If he was a little bit bigger, he could play.
I think I'd let him try to punt or kick. I mean, be a gunner.
But yeah, there's so much time between now and then. We're coming off the heels of probably top 3 championship games that I've ever watched. It was the sequel. The back-to-back was awesome. It was probably the easiest gimme in Vegas since when Ohio State beat Miami. Because going back-to-back is so tough. You
don't need to even get. We've had our discussion about that game. You and I differ. That game was
the phantom pass
interference that was not.
It was. It
Oh my gosh!
was.
You're just saying that because you're an Ohio
That's like
State
every Alabama fan's gonna be like, that's a pick. It's a questionable call.
No,
I do think, though, that they need instant replay challenges on penalties.
I'm against that. I think that you have to leave the human element of error in that, and once you start
that
going
kind of
down,
just avoids your comment about the whole pass interference thing.
Well, the pass interference thing, though, was you can't call something after the game's over. People are running on the field 5 minutes later and go, okay, now I'm going to throw a pass.
Well, the human element is you wanted to process that whole entire thing.
Yeah,
we can debate it all day long.
It's all good. Great game last night. We're going to touch on a little bit more coming up. And actually, I was going through the interweb today. Mike Vick still is around. I didn't know that.
What's the interweb?
The interweb, the web.
Wouldn't that just be the internet?
Interweb, internet, yeah.
Okay, so you're
I was going through. I saw that
Sorry.
Michael Vick was still around, and apparently Atlanta had a jersey retirement ceremony from the other night, and he put up a picture online. Okay. Warwick Dunn, you're familiar with Warwick Dunn.
Yeah.
We've had him on our show a few times. Yeah, Warwick Dunn does a charity, Warwick Dunn Charities, and they actually did something out in Dade City about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And they went up, it was all in the local news, the Tampa Tribune. He does a charity where single parents, he helps them get into homes mortgage-free. Mind you, they have to put in 300 hours with Habitat for Humanity to qualify. So one of his biggest, he's done 145, 150 homes in 10 years. That's insane. The guy is the Walter Payton Man of the Year Award. He's FSU Hall of Fame, one of the best ever. And he did a home for someone that I had no idea he did until Michael Vick tweeted it this morning. And I'm going to tell you guys who that is when we come back. I'm Connor Anthony, my awesome co-host Curt Lorden. You're listening to watching Tuesday Night Sports Talk. Coming to you live from Tampa Bay Multimedia here in beautiful Newport Richey, Florida. Catch us online at www.webeamtv.
Awesome.
If you were injured in a car crash, what would you do first? Who would you call?
You claim to be injured, yet you spoke to and saw an attorney before you saw a doctor. Is that true?
Yes.
Lawyers on TV tell you to call them first. You can, but should you? The law has changed, and you may find yourself paying your own medical bills if you don't see a doctor in the first 14 days. If you've been in a car crash, you need My Crash MD, the interactive doctor visit, where you can consult virtually with a physician after you've been hurt in a car accident.
We can see you today. We'll take great care of you, regardless if you are at fault or not.
My Crash MD is an actual medical visit with a doctor. No waiting in an ER, no wasting time driving around town. Download My Crash MD free from anywhere and then see a doctor on any mobile device. Times are changing. If you don't get medical attention within the first 14 days after your crash, you could lose your insurance benefits. So if you've been in a car crash, help yourself and your accident case with My Crash MD.
Revolutionary in his field, Dr. Bonatti created, perfected, and patented the Bonatti spine procedures. Using his genius, Bonatti invented precise tools necessary to minimize surgery, scarring, anesthesia, and recovery. So successful are the Bonatti spine procedures, they consistently reflect 98.75% patient satisfaction. 50,000 successful procedures have been performed exclusively at our location. Over half our patients have suffered from failed back and neck surgeries at other facilities. Bonatti succeeds where others fail.
Welcome back to Tuesday Night Sports Talk. I am your host, Connor Anthony, joined in studio by the one, the only, Mr. Curt Lorden. Nice enough for him to come out tonight and act as my co-host. So before the break, we were talking a bit about this amazing national championship game last night, which, funny enough, I didn't realize till I was on the way here that the game lasted over 4 hours.
I know. I stayed up and watched it.
I was about to go to bed, but it was one of those games I actually missed the USC Penn State Rose Bowl game because I went to bed early. And I was bombarded and scolded very harshly because of that. So I thought I should stay up to watch this game, and sure enough, it didn't have the outcome I wanted, but it wasn't too.
Well, it started off with a bang because I'm sitting there on my couch and I'm watching the pregame, and out walks these four people, and it's big town, big city, big whatever, big town I guess, or big city, and off to the right is this blonde dude. And I'm thinking, why is David Spade singing the national anthem? Guy looks exactly like him. Exactly like him. It's insane. So then I rolled into the game, and we, obviously watched it until 12:30, 12:45, and I recorded the end. So I watched Dabo Swinney do this with the trophy, and that one dude do a high kick and a split at the end.
It was impressive.
The reality is, this was great for the Tampa Bay area. I mean, I spent Friday downtown, and when everything was kind of getting set up and seeing the sea of people kind of pour in. And then Sunday went down to Hattrick's and watched part of the Steeler game. And it was cool because there was about 70% Clemson fans and about 30% Alabama fans. But they all just kind of sat and did their own thing. There was no, collegiate spirit. There was no screaming and yelling. That was maybe they were all hungover. I have no idea. I mean, they spent the entire time in downtown and probably Ybor, so they may have been just, waiting for the hair of the dog. So I got there, at 10:30 in the morning to wait for the Steelers game because I was thinking, Hattrick's is kind of a Steelers bar. I'll just go watch the game there. Not so much. But it was just interesting to see how just kind of debonair everyone was. It wasn't, there wasn't any screaming and yelling and carrying on until the game, obviously.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you can obviously tell that there was tremendous amount of Clemson fans versus Alabama
I was
fans.
driving down to work today in South Tampa, and I couldn't tell you, seriously, how many cars, coming from Wesley Chapel South, how many cars I saw going north that had Clemson flags on them. If I had $1 for every car, I probably could have paid off my car payment for the month. Seriously, I had to have seen at least, I've got to say, 200 cars today.
I've seen your car, so that's kind of a bad example. Well, what's funny is a bunch of my friends that kept asking me, where's Clemson University located?
My mom asked that. She was like, where's Clemson?
In Clemson. It's Stone City.
Yeah. Yeah, South Carolina, Clemson.
Well, and my my divisional office is actually in Huntsville, Alabama, so a lot of my people that I work with were upset this morning.
Yeah, I can imagine people weren't super happy. I got some Snapchats from friends that
Not
were...
a time to ask for favors during the work hours. Can you move this to the front of the row? Nope, I'm mad.
But no, you were talking about the economic impact on the Tampa Bay area. So the average ticket price for that game, want to take a guess how much it was going for? Average ticket price.
Average ticket price, not obviously face value, so I would say $850.
$3,300.
Get out of here.
$3,300 was the average ticket price.
Oh, yeah. Are you including like the suites and stuff like that?
Everything, yeah. And
I'm
apparently...
also really bad at guessing the number of gumballs in a jar game. So
I actually
don't
won
ever
that
ask me.
one time when I think I was in kindergarten. I think it was Skittles or something. It was M&M's, and I actually won. It was one of the highlights of my youth. So...
The stadium wasn't. The stadium wasn't even full. But at the end of the game, you could always tell. You could tell where all the Alabama fans were sitting because it was completely empty.
Well, maybe they blended. It's maybe because they're wearing camo. You just couldn't see them because they're wearing camo. You're like, oh, why? Oh, there's just a guy wearing camo overalls at the game. I didn't see him.
I want to revisit something. So you're telling me that you guessing the amount of M&Ms in a jar was the highlight of your youth?
Yeah, it was almost up there with graduating college. So I mean, because how many times in your life are you going to be the one that wins the guessing for M&Ms? I mean, it was a couple dozen people. So.
I don't know, when I got my first dog, or when I went on my biggest roller coaster, or I don't know, hit a game-winning home run in Little League. That was kind of my.
Nah, but just it's one of those things that you just don't. I never won anything. Like I'm always like the worst person to win anything, whether it's scratch-offs or contests or whatever. So winning that was pretty. It was pretty up there.
Okay.
But.
All right,
and the economic impact on the Tampa Bay area from that game last night, they say it was upwards of $250 million for Tampa Bay. So,
well, I talk about this on the radio show quite a bit. Yeah, it is the best place to work, live, and play, and this was a huge. And we're gonna have it back again. I mean, we had the Super Bowl back in what year?
I believe it was 2009, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
with the Cardinals and the Steelers. You should know.
Well, I can't remember the year. It was a long time ago. But anyway, so having this national championship game, and I know we'll have it in 6, 7, 8 years from now. It's just we put on a great show. I mean, downtown was gorgeous. They had the yacht village, which was awesome. There was a 150-foot yacht plus 15 more, and I think someone was down there broadcasting live from ESPN.
Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike
Golick were down there. Tony Dungy was down there. Stephen A. Smith was down there. They've had everybody. Mm-hmm. But I was listening today, and I forgot that they had one of the. I think it was Brett Musburger. It might have been him.
Brett Musburger.
It might have been him. It might have been someone else. But they were talking about the next 3 national college championships are going to be in Atlanta, Santa Clara, California, because of the new 49er Stadium, and New Orleans. Then after that, they're going to open up bidding again. For 2021 to 2023, and one of the big guys for the NCAA said that they love Tampa. They said that despite the weather, if it was normal Tampa weather, everything would have been perfect. And mind you, these are people coming from all across the country. So Tampa weather, it wasn't up there. It was in the 50s, 60s. What's it like in Alabama or South Carolina?
Alabama is very, very cold. I was there last February. We went to Lake Martin, did white bass fishing. And it was 25 degrees and freezing cold and absolutely miserable. So they actually got kind of a warm front.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. I mean, there was a few days of cold rain one day, but other than that, they said that everything that people had control over, you obviously can't control the weather. Everything people had control over was amazing.
It's the polar vortex.
Yeah. So
if you ever see Dennis Quaid or Jake Gyllenhaal walking around your town, run to Mexico.
Run to Mexico. I like Jake Gyllenhaal.
What's the day after tomorrow? Have you seen the movie?
Oh, I have. Yeah. Well, once stuff starts. And you know what the saddest part about that movie was? It brought a tear to my eye in the theater. Is the part where the tornado comes through downtown Los Angeles and just destroys downtown Los Angeles, because that's my home city. I'm like, oh.
It doesn't have a water supply technically. and it's overpopulated.
They're in a desert, and they're going off on their own thing. But anyways.
Well, the one thing I did learn is that apparently the NCAA's steroid requirements, or I'm sorry, not requirements, but their steroid, help me out here, their steroid standards.
Their standards
for
or their allowance
referees
for
apparently don't exist because Homeboy was jacked.
Have you seen the guy's muscles?
I want to see him and Ed Hockley literally arm wrestle.
No, there was literally like memes. It was like the guy pointing, and it was like when your girlfriend wants to go to the bread aisle, but you need to get those gains. And it's
Dude,
like,
I really thought Hulk Hogan was out there going, "What are you gonna do, brother? It's over there.
It's over there." Well, that guy is jacked.
Actually, what should have happened is that when Scarborough went out, they should have just traded uniforms. Scarborough take the black and white. Homeboy take
it. That guy was a beast, and that was, I think, in my opinion, Scarborough going down was the point that changed that game.
Well,
Up into that point, 93 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then you looked at Jalen Hurts. Okay, he's a true freshman. I think I was at an Alabama watch party last night. One of the ladies there said he turned 18 in August. I turned 23 in August, so that's weird thinking he's 5. Set the school record for 36 touchdowns he's been responsible for this year. And that's Alabama. Alabama, one of the best, if not best, collegiate program. A true freshman just set the record for the most amount of touchdowns responsible
I mean, dude's legit, but you're right. He's 18 years old. It's the biggest stage he's ever been on his entire life. He's not a polished passer. And, Clemson's defensive scheme was to make him beat them. And he did a great job. I mean, that clutch run at the end, which we all thought sealed the deal.
I was so happy. I was like, my God, this guy is forever going to etch his name in the book just for that run. But that reminds me of back in 2014 when, Auburn was in the Rose Bowl and they went ahead and everyone's like, oh, it's over, it's over. Then FSU drove through the field with a minute left and ended up taking it.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, the thing with Hurd is that, his future is going to hinge on how this game affects him mentally.
Right.
Because if he picks this up as, you know what, I played a great game, I'm not going to be destroyed, my confidence is still there. Next year, Alabama, which is, I read the 2 early preseason top 25, they'll be number 1 again.
Can we just take a minute, though, to admire the fact that my three of my 4 collegiate teams that I cheer for are in the top 3. That's pretty awesome.
Who are they?
Alabama, Florida State, USC. 1, 2, 3.
Awesome. I mean, I could root for 15 teams. So why do you root for Florida State?
When I moved to Florida back in 2005 in high school, I like Florida State. Back when they had Christian Ponder, when they were losing 6 games a year, and Florida had Tim Tebow, right? So Tim Tebow was, the savior. Everyone was a Florida fan. I just never cared for them.
I find it ironic that Tebow was the savior, but
Aaron Hernandez is the capital. But
the Knowles had a Christian.
Exactly. But no, I've always just really liked them, even though when they were bad, back when, Bobby Bowden was losing 5, it basically got forced out, and I stuck with them, and now they're, the top team in Florida.
Well, obviously, SC, because you're
from California. At Alabama, I was about that close to going to school there, so I decided I'm going to start pulling for them. And one of the saddest things is if I went to school at Alabama, they would have won the national championship 3 times in my 4 years there. Something that you would never see again.
So I can see you as an old man sitting on your porch in a rocking chair going, I just wish I'd have went to Alabama. I could have partied my ass off.
Now I'd be going there, roll tide. I don't know, man. Maybe I would be having like a couple pairs of camo overalls, Dukes of Hazzard-esque type. Have you been to Tuscaloosa?
Yeah, my fraternity's mother chapter is there. Alabama Mu.
I haven't been there, but I looked through it on Google Maps, and about 10 minutes later, I'm like, I'm kind of glad I didn't go to Tuscaloosa. It looks rough.
Oh, it's actually a really pretty city.
I haven't been, so I wouldn't know. But
well, and I mean, as much as it pains me, it's almost as pretty as Ann Arbor, which it really hurts me to say that as a Buckeye fan. But I went to Ohio State, Michigan 7 years ago, and it is first of all, Michigan fans are super nice. And the town itself is gorgeous. And if you ever get a chance to go up there, just go to the apple orchards in the fall. You'll have a wonderful time. The cool thing at the big house is when you walk in on the 3rd level, and actually in the 50-yard line, they have a crane that they couldn't lift out because they dug it in a hole. So it's actually buried in the 50-yard line.
Oh, wow.
And then you walk across a huge golf course to get there. And I'm walking, and I got a 40 in my hand. And I look over, and there's this guy peeing in the 9th hole, just on one knee peeing because he's
that sounds
obviously
good.
intoxicated, getting ready to go into the game.
About to hit our second commercial break, but when we come back on Tuesday Night
We're gonna
Sports
talk
Talk,
playoffs.
we are going to talk your fantasy death pool.
Oh, okay, that too. Which explains my ringtone, my new ringtone.
I can't go wrong with that much. So, Tuesday Night Sports Talk, WeBeam TV, Tampa Bay Multimedia.
If you were injured in a car crash, what would you do first? Who would you call?
You claim to be injured, yet you spoke to and saw an attorney before you saw a doctor. Is that true?
Yes.
Lawyers on TV tell you to call them first. You can, but should you? The law has changed, and you may find yourself paying your own medical bills if you don't see a doctor in the first 14 days. If you've been in a car crash, you need MyCrashMD, the interactive doctor visit, where you can consult virtually with a physician after you've been hurt in a car accident.
We can see you today. We'll take great care of you, regardless if you are at fault or not.
MyCrashMD is an actual medical visit with a doctor. No waiting in an ER, no wasting time driving around town. Download MyCrashMD free from anywhere and then see a doctor on any mobile device. Times are changing. If you don't get medical attention within the first 14 days after your crash, you could lose your insurance benefits. So if you've been in a car crash, help yourself and your accident case with MyCrashMD.
Revolutionary in his field, Dr. Bonatti created, perfected, and patented the Bonatti spine procedures. Using his genius, Bonatti invented precise tools necessary to minimize surgery, scarring, anesthesia, and recovery. So successful are the Bonatti spine procedures, they consistently reflect 98.75% patient satisfaction. 50,000 successful procedures have been performed exclusively at our location. Over half our patients have suffered from failed back and neck surgeries at other facilities. Bonatti succeeds where others fail.
Welcome back to Tuesday Night Sports Talk. Your host, Connor Anthony, joined in studio by my good friend, Curt Lorden. And Curt, I realized as we were rambling on and on during the break that you...
The longest tease ever.
Rudely interrupted me. Yes, you
Literally a 2-segment tease.
Carried away.
All right, tell me who Warrick gave a house to.
Deshaun Watson.
When?
2006, when he was 11 years old. He grew up in Atlanta. So Michael Vick tweeted a picture earlier of Deshaun Watson. That kid in the black sweatshirt, that's Deshaun Watson.
That's cool.
That's really cool.
That's really cool. I'm surprised that the NCAA didn't somehow dig up like some sort of a random backwoods violation. I'm sure it'll probably come up.
It'll come up, you influenced him when he was 11, But I mean, I'm assuming, though, if he got a house for him, he would have been like, hey, go to Florida State, go to Florida State.
Exactly.
Got to ask you a quick question real quick. We're talking about Florida State. We're talking about Clemson. Dabo Swinney came out last night after the game and said that he thinks the ACC is the best conference in college football. Agree or disagree?
I don't necessarily disagree. I mean, it's kind of top heavy, and I know a lot of people put a lot of pressure or a lot of emphasis on bowl games, and when you get to the point as a college athlete and you get to the bowl games, sometimes you're checked out, and it's really tough for a coach to get them motivated. I mean, what the Minnesota, not the Badgers.
Minnesota
Gophers. Sorry, brain fart. Anyway, the Gophers, they wanted to boycott it because of something they had within the locker room.
Well,
and we have star players that are sitting out because of a pro career. So you can't judge a conference's strength by the bowl schedule. You got to measure it on during the regular season, head to head, when it counts. So, do I disagree? No, I would say ACC and Big Ten were 1A, 1B. As far as strength, and SEC being, second, and then I would say Pac-12 and then Big 12.
Pac-12 never gets any love, but
because they're not good.
Washington was. I mean, they made it to the quarterfinals or semifinals. I guess now is semifinals. Then you've got USC who won the Rose Bowl. Colorado, who was
they're getting better. I'm not saying they're good.
Yeah, no, I disagree. I think having two top, arguably, I mean, Washington will drop. I think the rankings came out, the end of the season.
Way too early. Oh, the
end of the season. The after the season, and I guess USF is actually ranked.
Yeah, and they're actually supposed to be 22nd, which is actually funny because
they're 19th in the 19th. AP.
So Oregon hired Jim Leavitt. Yes. As one of on their coaching staff. So, and I actually had the honor of meeting Willie Taggart at a USF athletic banquet. And I'm sitting there at a table, and we're front row, and there's a couple sitting next to us, and they're real quiet, just real reserved. And I get up and I go put money on a USF helmet that's signed, and I win the silent auction. I bring it back, and like, oh, you won? Yeah. I go, I have no idea who signed it. And dude's like, I did. And I'm like, Bill, you could have signed this napkin for free, and I spent $400 on a signed helmet. I mean, come on. He's like, well, maybe it's worth money someday. And actually, what he did with USS program was phenomenal. And I think that Charlie Strong is going to take that to the next level. And I'm really excited for what Charlie Strong can do here, and I'm excited for what Taggart can do out in Oregon.
Yeah, no, I'm actually really interested. Not that he took the job. There's been people discussing it, saying, how could he have taken the job? How could he leave USF? Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, is one of Oregon's biggest donors. He regularly cuts out checks in the tens of millions. Can you try to sit there and say there's any question that Taggart would leave for a place that has basically unlimited athletic funds, is in a Pac-12, has been to the national championship? Mind you, they've lost twice in the last 6-7 years. I've unfortunately been on the Oregon end when they lost to Auburn and Ohio State.
Yay.
But I didn't have any surprise that he left. I was thinking I would have done the exact same thing, because I am one of the silent majority that I don't think USF will ever be a big football school.
Whoa.
Don't think so.
Well, here's the problem. So when Leavitt was getting to that point, I mean, they were ranked number 2 in the country, right?
Briefly, they did, but briefly. And then that, but again, you got to take your,
right. So then Leavitt left, unfortunately. And right now, yes, they are a stepping stone. So Taggart went from, I think, Western Kentucky, came to USF, rebuilt this program, and now went on to bigger and better things. Well, Charlie Strong is kind of going the exact opposite, and I think he'll stick around for USF a little bit longer. And now they're kind of in this, cocoon stage, which they can go either way. They either can explode on the scene and be a big name, great program, great job to have, or they can continue to sit in this kind of seesaw scenario where they're exactly what they are, which is a stepping stone. One of the shocking job acceptance was when Lane Kiffin took Florida Atlantic. FAU. That makes no sense to me.
The reason why, if you look at it, Lane Kiffin's resume is awful. Okay, he goes to Tennessee, is there for a year, 7-6. In Oakland, he was the youngest head coach. I don't know if it was, I forgot if it was in history or at the time. Doesn't do anything. Goes to USC, where he was an assistant under Pete Carroll.
Yeah, but he's still young.
I mean, he's in his
but just take that job.
But you've had
sense.
3 places that you've just absolutely failed. So Alabama brings him on as an offensive coordinator. He does great. That's awesome. A good reference to make is some people are great at working on cars, but they couldn't run a business. Other people are great at running a business, but don't know anything about working on cars. So I could own a mechanic shop if I know how to do it and make good money, but that doesn't mean I should be going there and trying to fix your car if you bring it in. Lane Kiffin can't coach. The fact that he took Florida Atlantic, which is a job that I feel is has no value to the name, just despite the fact that you're a head coach for an FBS school.
So it's more ego-driven, I guess.
I think it's the fact that him and Saban were having problems. He decided that he wanted an out. They're falling out, and I think the job did that. But I think he also wants to reinvent himself. I think he's seen, maybe what Willie Taggart's done, and think maybe if I can go to FAU, a program that has never done anything, that's never been competitive, if he could go down there and turn them into something decent, another job will open, and then another job will open, and then maybe one day at some point an Alabama job will open.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, let's talk about some playoffs.
I love playoffs, but first, I'm interested to hear you're trying to skip over this fantasy death pool.
So obviously 2016 was horrible with celebrity deaths. So we decided, a group of friends of mine decided to do a fantasy death pool where you got a draft order that was picked out of a hat, and you had whatever picks that you wanted. You could choose any celebrity, and if he or she passed away within the year of 2017, first place won 70% of the pool, second place wins 20, and third place wins 10. I'm not going to tell you what my first pick is, but I can tell you that my ringtone is the Golden Girls theme song. So you can figure out who my first round.
That is awful. That's so. I actually had.
Well, then I ended up getting an offer to be on this show, and I hope people don't think I'm a celebrity. It's like, well, they don't draft me.
They don't draft the Curt Lorden like the third overall. I don't know. I think after having a couple ACL surgeries, you might be like a third or fourth round guy. I don't know.
Yeah, I am probably.
But not college. We're done with college football now. Sadly,
We've
until
closed
September.
that chapter, and we moved on.
It's all good, but this weekend. We've got some NFL play, and this is where it's going to get serious. This isn't that BS week last week that had blowouts. This is going to be a week that, besides, I think, the New England-Houston game, I think everything else is looking rather competitive. New England-Houston is going to be a 16. Right now, New England's favored by 16, 3 scores.
Yeah, depending on where you shop, it's anywhere between 15 and 16. So, and I mean, their first meeting was a blowout, and that was without Brady. And the problem is that Houston is horrible on the road. They're horrible on the road. They've been outscored 189 to 111. They have 9 sacks versus 20 at home. And they're going to New England with Brady. Brady has, and I hate Brady with all of my football might, but he has a chip on his shoulder with this whole deflate gate and everything else. So, despite the fact that Bill O'Brien is trying to rebuild New England down there with George Godsey, Romeo Crennel, Mark Vrabel, Anthony Pleasant, and then they signed Vince Wilfork. It's basically a warmer climate version of a crappier version of New England. Problem is that when you're dealing with Belichick, who might as well be Emperor Palpatine, because he's all-knowing of everything, even in his weird. I'm not sure who's more boring on a press conference, and not to bring up college football, but Saban or Belichick. I mean, it's like talking to a robot. I mean, he's funny, though. At
least Nick Saban, I feel like, shows emotion. Like, even when he's like, it's always mad emotion. He's always angry. But I feel like Belichick he's always like,
I'd hate to be their kids. Be
like you lost the Super Bowl. How was it?
The worst discipline ever.
Yeah, it was bad. Like Saban is like, I asked for this steak medium rare. This is mid-well. It's like.
Well, I mean, really, the only way that Houston has a shot is Clowney needs to go lights out and get to Brady and get him uncomfortable. Osweiler has to be. Their running game's not going to happen. Let's just put that to bed. Osweiler has to be on point. We're looking 85% completion percentage, dink and dunk, control the clock, but I really see New England 31-10. I would take New England and give the points at 15.
I think that they're going to light them up. I think that Houston, it's actually sad because if you look at the team they have, minus 3-time defensive player of the year, J.J. Watt, and a quarterback, I mean,
they're 2-6 on the road.
Their conference is extremely weak, or their division. They could have easily, in my opinion, been a 12 or 13 win team if they had a capable quarterback. So when we come back, we're going to touch on Kansas City, Pittsburgh, Dallas, Green Bay, Seattle, Atlanta. You're listening to Tuesday Night Sports Talk. Connor Anthony, Curt Lorden. We'll be right back.
If you were injured in a car crash, what would you do first? Who would you call?
You claim to be injured, yet you spoke to and saw an attorney before you saw a doctor. Is that true?
Yes.
Lawyers on TV tell you to call them first. You can, but should you? The law has changed, and you may find yourself paying your own medical bills if you don't see a doctor in the first 14 days. If you've been in a car crash, you need My Crash MD, the interactive doctor visit, where you can consult virtually with a physician after you've been hurt in a car accident.
We can see you today. We'll take great care of you, regardless if you are at fault or not.
My Crash MD is an actual medical visit with a doctor. No waiting in an ER, no wasting time driving around town. Download My Crash MD free from anywhere and then see a doctor on any mobile device. Times are changing. If you don't get medical attention within the first 14 days after your crash, you could lose your insurance benefits. So if you've been in a car crash, help yourself and your accident case with My Crash MD.
Revolutionary in his field, Dr. Bonatti created, perfected, and patented the Bonatti spine procedures. Using his genius, Bonatti invented precise tools necessary to minimize surgery, scarring, anesthesia, and recovery. So successful are the Bonatti spine procedures, they consistently reflect 98.75% patient satisfaction. 50,000 successful procedures have been performed exclusively at our location. Over half our patients have suffered from failed back and neck surgeries at other facilities. Bonatti succeeds where others fail.
Just before the break, we were getting our feet a little wet, talking about the NFL playoffs this weekend. Going to be the conference semifinals. One of the games that is going to be on at Sunday, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and a game that's going to be a favorite of Curt Lorden. It's going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers facing off against the Kansas City Chiefs from Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City. Pittsburgh defeated Miami last week rather handsomely. I believe a 30-6 score. 12. A game which Matt Moore almost lost his life, but they put him back in. A game that
Dupree lights out. I mean, he just that hurt me.
Pittsburgh completely dominated that. They did.
They looked like the Steelers of the '70s. I mean, they were hitting hard. It was intense. Despite the fact that as the game waned on, their offensive output kind of fizzled a little bit. And, what's funny is that all 4 of these games this week are all rematches of the regular season. So it'll be really interesting to see. We already talked about New England, Houston. New England, let's chalk it up. New England's going to be 2-0 against Houston in 2016.
Yes.
Just the way it's going to happen.
It's 2017 now, so
all right, so 2016 season. I'm sorry. Thank you for being so critical of me. And obviously, in week 4, Kansas City got blown out. It was in Pittsburgh, 43-14. Arrowhead's a very tough place to play.
Very loud place to play.
It's a very loud place to play, and say that a lot. Say that 5 times fast. And Pittsburgh doesn't historically play well in Arrowhead. I think we got beat 2 years ago, and we just don't play well. And actually, the last playoff win minus last year was in 1992, where Pittsburgh lost to Kansas City, but that's when Joe Montana was actually quarterbacking them. But since 1990, KC's like 4-12 in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And Pittsburgh is 19-14. And if Drew Bledsoe didn't get his lungs ripped out of his chest by the Jets on the sideline, and the Brady era never came to fruition, that number would probably be a little bit higher. But we'll see what happens. Anyway, so back on the game. KC's 12-4. But who have they really haven't played anyone.
Their division's been strong, though. They've got the Raiders, the Broncos in their division.
Raiders, yes. Broncos, no. Yeah. And your San Diego Chargers, God rest their soul.
Yeah. I didn't say that we were good. I'm just saying the division was decent.
You're the best 3-13
We were
team.
5-11. Thank you. Last year we were 4-12. We have
You're improving by one game. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, it's been a long 2 years. That's for sure.
No, but in order for KC to even make this competitive, Tyreek Hill has to have a big game. They have to rely on Kelsey, and their offensive line really has to keep Smith up. Smith upright. And really for Pittsburgh, the keys are defense. We're not sure about Big Ben's foot. He's the dude's a beast. He
plays through pain.
The problem is that he plays through pain when he shouldn't, and sometimes when he puts pressure, when he plants, his balls sail. Again, this is the first playoff where we've had the killer bees, the big three, Brown, Bell, and Big Ben. I think they accounted for several touchdowns last year
Bell's
or last week. I'm sorry.
Incredible.
And you look at their rankings. Their rankings are defensively and offensively. There's a huge gap there. But if you actually look at the numbers, they're about 50 yards off offensively and defensively. Well, Vegas has it right. I think Vegas has KC a 2-point favorite.
Okay.
I love Pittsburgh in the points. I think that what they're doing, the way that they're trending, the way that they're surging, with having Brown and Bell, Green, Roethlisberger, and what they're doing defensively, it's phenomenal. So I think it's going to be Pittsburgh 24-17. So I'd take Pittsburgh getting 2 and take it to the bank. Then we have what's up next?
We have, I believe, what should be one of the better games. I don't think it's going to be the best game, so to speak, but I think it's going to be one of the best ones. It's going to be the Cowboys and the Packers. The Packers. Not a Packers fan, not a Giants fan, but last week, Aaron Rodgers put on a clinic. He put on a clinic of how to humiliate a team in the playoffs, which he's done before. And his last 7 weeks, Aaron Rodgers has thrown, including the playoffs, including that game last weekend when he threw for 4, he's thrown for 22 touchdowns and 0 picks in his last 7 games.
Oh, yeah. He's got a QB rating of 117 since the beginning of December. Now, my biggest concern with Dallas is Zeke's rested. I love Zeke. Ohio State fan. Zeke's one of my favorite NFL players at this point. Probably going to win Rookie of the Year, may win MVP. Definitely win Rookie of the Year, may win MVP.
Rookie of the Year, yes. MVP, no.
But they rested him last game. And you look at Le'Veon Bell was suspended for 3 games. It's tough when you take that time off. It's tough to get back in a game mode. So that's my biggest concern with that. In addition to the fact that in December, you take out Dak Prescott's yards per game, completion percentage. He's been sacked 10 times. He threw 2 picks in December. His numbers are going like this. You take out the Tampa game, and he might be the worst quarterback in the league. So you take all those into consideration, even with Jordy Nelson being out. And with what Randall Cobb did in last week's game, if Randall Cobb can duplicate that, and I picked Green Bay to go to the Super Bowl. It's going to be my goal. My pick is Pittsburgh, Green Bay. That's who I think will be in. You can't, when you look at a quarterback, you take everything away. Take Rodgers or Prescott.
Rodgers every day.
Of course, you have rookie fatigue, which is a huge thing. I mean, these kids went through the entire college football season, the combine, rookie camp, OTAs, spring ball, or not spring ball, that's baseball.
Yeah.
Preseason, and a full slate of games. Their body has not rested. That's a big issue. So if you guys are looking at it, absolutely take Green Bay in the points. I think they're getting 4.5. It just makes complete sense on that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I don't like Green Bay. I don't like to admit that they are going to win. I unfortunately like Dallas even less, and I am right there with you. The one thing I have to give Dallas credit on, which I didn't realize, was 3 of their offensive line. Everyone knows their line is good, but 3 of their offensive linemen were named All-Pros.
Oh yeah, their offensive line's been
Incredible.
great. Well, I can't remember who actually was tossing some shade towards Zeke, but he basically said, my grandmother could run through the holes that you have.
They could. You can put any running back on that
Except for DeMarco Murray.
DeMarco Murray.
No, actually, I'm sorry. He went to
He's
to
in
Philly.
Tennessee.
I apologize.
No, Tennessee.
Apologize.
Yeah, Tennessee. He's doing well in Tennessee too.
Who was their quarterback or running back last year? Did not have a good year at all.
Darren McFadden?
Yes.
Darren McFadden's awful.
Well, then you can't say anyone can run behind their line.
Yeah, Darren McFadden's one of the biggest busts ever. He was the one that right after the 2007 Jamarcus Russell pick that Oakland went that, and they followed that up the next year with the Darius Hayward-Bay pick. So
what do we have next?
We have what I think is going to be the best game of this weekend, and arguably I think will be the best game of the playoffs. Seattle-Atlanta coming to us live from Atlanta.
I agree. Matty Ice is 1-4 in the playoffs. His last win was a 30-28 home win against Seattle in 2000. It was January 13, 2013. So apparently Matty Ice thaws in the playoffs. He has 9 TDs versus 7 interceptions. He doesn't play well on that big stage. But what he has this year is he has 2 dynamic running backs that can not only run the ball, but they can catch in the backfield. He has just a complete plethora of weapons. They suck on run defense. Seattle isn't all that great in rush offense. So it's going to be a nice battle. I like Seattle and the points, but I think the Falcons will win 31-30.
I don't.
Seattle can get pressure on Matty and force him to make poor throws and let their secondary do their thing. I think Seattle can win. But if the game was in Seattle, completely different ballgame.
Yeah. Well, no one wins in Seattle in the playoffs. It's very hard to do. I actually have a buddy who's a Packers fan, and a couple of years ago, he's putting stuff on Facebook when the Packers were winning in Seattle in the playoffs, and then Seattle came back and beat them, and I was like, hey man, what happened to your Packers? Where's your status go? I don't see Atlanta winning because Atlanta reminds me of my Chargers back in the early to mid 2000s.
With Marion Butts?
No, it
was mid-90s.
Phillip Rivers and LT. They were a high-scoring offense, were near the top in the league in all offensive input, and they'd go to the playoffs and they'd be out. They couldn't win. I think that if Atlanta, if this was the first round, they'd be knocked down the first round. They got to bye. It's the second round. I don't see them getting past Seattle. I think Russell Wilson has shown that he is an incredibly efficient quarterback in the playoffs as well as the regular season. Thomas Rawls has been not terrible. He's there.
Well, since December 1st, they're averaging 131 yards a game. So and remember, Rawls didn't play the whole entire season. So they're starting to surge and they're starting to trend just like some of these other power teams. This is the best divisional round I've seen in years. Look at the quarterback play. We have Rodgers, Brady, Ryan, Wilson, and Prescott. Prescott obviously being the unknown, but we have some power.
3 of those guys are going to be serious MVP finalists.
Three
it's going to be
maybe Hall of Famers.
Matt Ryan, I think, is difficult to make the excuse for that he'll be a Hall of Famer. I think he's a criminally underrated guy, but the way Wilson's been going, the way obviously we know Brady is. Rodgers has 297 career touchdowns and 72 picks.
Yeah. Well, to wrap up, take the Seahawks and the points, take Pittsburgh and the points.
You're singing another tune a second ago. You're saying Atlanta.
No, I said Atlanta's going to win, but the Seahawks are going to cover. Atlanta's a 4.5-point favorite. And then obviously New England giving 15, take them, and then run to the bank with the Packers.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
Well, thank you for joining us on our inaugural episode of Tuesday Night Sports Talk with Connor Anthony and Curt Lorden. We will be here next week, same time, same place.
Thanks, guys. Good night.